infants, so another couple of chapters again today. And can you remember what happened on the last video, or what happened in those chapters? Have a think. Can you remember what happened? And let's check. So on the last couple of chapters, Mr. Twit had played a prank on Mrs. Twit and changed the size of her walking stick to make her think that she had the shrinks. Let's see. After that, he then told Mrs. Twit that she had to be stretched. And where we left the last chapter was that, let's see, it gave Mr. Twit a second nasty idea. And I wondered if any of you managed to guess what that nasty idea is. So let's check if you managed to get it right. Mrs. Twit goes ballooning up. There's enough to pull here to take me out of the moon, said Mrs. Twit cried. To take you to the moon? Exclaimed Mr. Twit. What a ghastly thought! We wouldn't want anything like that to happen. Oh dear me, no. We most certainly wouldn't, cried Mrs. Twit. Put some more strings around my ankles quickly. I want to feel absolutely safe. Do you think she is absolutely safe? Now there's a picture I don't want to show you just yet till we read on. Very well, my angel, said Mr. Twit, and with a ghoulish grin on his lips he knelt down at her feet. He took a knife from his pocket and with one quick slash he cut through the strings holding Mrs. Twit's ankles to the iron ring. She went up like a rocket. Help! She screamed. Save me! But there was no saving her now. In a few seconds she was high up in the blue sky and climbing fast. Mr. Twit stood below looking up. What a pretty sight, he thought to himself. How lovely are all of those balloons looking in the sky, and what a marvellous bit of luck for me. At last the old hag is lost and gone forever. Look, he cut her free. There he is down the bottom, and she's away up in the sky. Wonder what will happen to her now. Mrs. Twit comes ballooning down. Mrs. Twit may have been an ugly and she may have been beastly, but she was not stupid. High up in the sky, she had a bright idea. If I can get rid of some of these balloons, she said to herself, I will stop going up and start to come down. There she is. She had a great idea. She began biting through the strings that held her balloons to her wrists and arms and neck and hair. Each time she bit through a string and left her balloon float away. Then upwards pull got less and her rate of climb slowed down. When she had bitten through 20 strings, she stopped going up altogether. She stayed still in the air. She bit through one more string and very, very slowly she began to float downwards. It was a calm day. There was no wind at all, and because of this, Mrs. Twit hadn't gone straight up. She now began to come absolutely straight down. As she floated gently down, Mrs. Twit's petticoat billowed like a parachute, showing her long knickers. It was a grand sight on a glorious day, and thousands of birds came flying in from miles around to stare at this extraordinary old woman in the sky. Mr. Twit gets a horrid shock. Mr. Twit, who thought he had seen his ugly wife for the last time, was sitting in the garden celebrating with a mug of beer. Silently, Mrs. Twit came floating down. When she was about the height of the house above Mr. Twit, she suddenly called out at the top of her voice, Here I come, you grizzly old grunion, you rotten old turnip, you filthy old frumpet. Mr. Twit jumped as though he had been stung by a giant wasp. And there he is, jumping high. He dropped his beer, he looked up, he gasped and he gasped. He gurgled, a few choking sounds came out of his mouth. Oh, he said, ah, ouch. I'll get you for this, shouted Mrs. Twit. She was floating down right on top of him. She was purple with rage and slashing the air with her long walking stick, which she had somehow managed to hang on to all the time. I'll swish you with a swizzle, she shouted. I'll swash you with a swizzle. I'll gnash you with a nozzle. I'll gnash you with a nozzle and Josh, her temper. And before Mr. Twit had time to run away, his bundle of balloons and petticoats and fiery fury landed right on top of him, lashing out with the stick and cracking him all over his body. Look at that big mess that's happening there. The house, the tree, and the monkey's cage. But that's enough of that. We can't go on forever watching these two disgusting people doing disgusting things to each other. We mustn't get ahead with the story. Here's a picture of Mr. and Mrs. Twit's house and their garden. Some house, it looks like a prison and not a window anywhere. It's their house and their garden. Who wants windows, Mr. Twit had said when they were building it. Who wants every Tom, Dick and Harry peeping into to see what they're doing? It didn't occur to Mr. Twit that windows were meant mainly for looking out of, not looking into. And what do you think that this ghastly garden, Mrs. Twit was the gardener. She was very good at growing thistles and stinging nettles. I always grow plenty of spiky thistles and plenty of stinging nettles, she used to say. They keep out nasty, nosy little children. Near the house you can see Mr. Twit's work shed. To one side there is a big dead tree. It never has any leaves on it because it's dead. Not far from the tree you can see the monkey cage. There are 4 monkeys in it. They belong to Mr. Twit. You will hear about them later. Hug tight, stinky glue. Once a week on Wednesdays the Twits had bird pie for supper. Mr. Twit caught the birds and Mrs. Twit cooked them. Mr. Twit was good at catching birds. On the day before Bird Pie Day, he would put ladder up against the big, dead tree and climb onto the branches with a bucket of glue and a paintbrush. The glue he used was something called Hug Tight, and it was stickier than any other glue in the world. He would paint it along all the tops of the branches and then he would go away. As the sun went down, birds would fly in from all around to roost at night on the big dead tree. They didn't know, poor things, that the branches were all smeared with horrible hug-tight glue. The moment they landed on the branch, their feet would stick. And that was that. The next morning, which was Bird Pie Day, Mr. Twit would climb up with the ladder and grab all the wretched birds that were stuck to the tree. It didn't matter what kind they were, song thrushes, blackbirds, sparrows, crows, little Jenny Wren, robins, anything. They all went into the pot for Wednesday's bird pie supper. So there they are, the birds are all stuck, and there's the pie. What can you notice about the pie? What do you think that is sticking out? 4 sticky little boys. On one Tuesday evening, after Mr. Twit had been up the ladder and smeared the tree with hug-tight glue, 4 little boys crept into the garden to look at the monkeys. They didn't care about the thistles and the stinging nettles, not when they were monkeys to look at. After a while, they got tired of looking at the monkeys, so they explored further into the garden and found the ladder leaning against the dead tree. They decided to climb up it just for fun. There's nothing wrong with that. The next morning, when Mr. Twit went out to collect the birds, he found 4 miserable little boys sitting there, stuck as tight as they could be by the seats of their pants to the branches. There were no birds, because the presence of the boys had scared them away. Mr. Twit was furious. As there were no birds for my pie tonight, he shouted, and it'll have to be boys instead. He started to climb the ladder. Boy pie might be better than bird pie, he went on, grinning horribly. More meat and not so tiny little bones. The boys were terrified. He's going to boil us, cried one of them. He'll stew us alive, wailed the other one. He'll cook us with carrots, cried the third. But the 4th little boy, who was more sense than the others, whispered, Listen, I've got an idea. We're only stuck by the seat of our pants, so quick, unbutton your pants and slip out of them and fall to the ground. Mr. Twit had reached the top of the ladder and was just about to make a grab for the nearest boy and all of a sudden they tumbled out of the tree and ran for home with their naked bottoms winging in the air. So there they are, stuck as Mr. Twit started to climb up his ladder, and then off they went, ran away out of their trousers. The Great Upside Down Monkey Circus. Now for the monkeys. The 4 monkeys in the cage in the garden were all one family. They were a Mugglewump and his wife and 2 small children. But what on earth were Mr. and Mrs. Twit doing with monkeys in their garden? Well, in the old days, they had both worked in the circus as monkey trainers. They used to teach monkeys to do tricks and to do dress up in human clothes and smoke pipes and all of the rest of that nonsense. Today, although they were retired, Mr. Twit still wanted to train the monkeys. It was his dream that one day he would own the first great upside-down monkey circus in the world. That meant that the monkeys had to do everything upside down. They had to dance upside down, on their hands with their feet in the air. They had to play football upside down. They had to balance on top of one another upside down, with Mugglewump at the bottom and the smallest baby monkey at the very top. They even had to eat and drink upside down, and that is not an easy thing to do because the food and water has to go up your throat instead of down. In fact, it is almost impossible. But the monkeys simply had to do it, otherwise they got nothing. All this sounds pretty silly to you and me. It sounded pretty silly to the monkeys too. They absolutely hated having to do things upside down and nonsense day after day. It made them giddy standing on their heads for hours on end. Sometimes the 2 small monkey children would faint with so much blood going to their heads. But Mr. Twit didn't care about that. He kept them practising for 6 hours every day, and if they didn't do as they were told, Mrs. Twit would soon come running with her beastly stick. That doesn't sound very good, so we'll end there and we'll see what happens next. What do you think is going to happen next? You can always leave in the comments if you think what you think is going to happen